Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're shifting gears completely. We're slowing the tempo right down.
Yeah, way down.
Right. I want you to do me a favor. You listening right now. Forget about the studio or your commute.
Forget about the laundry pile you're probably staring at.
Exactly. I want you to imagine we are sitting in a dimly lit library. It is late. Like past 10 at night late.
I like this. Setting the mood.
Yeah, well, it fits the material. Imagine there is a fire crackling in the fireplace. It's casting those long dancing shadows on the walls that make everything look a little bit alive. Outside, it is pitch black. It's winter.
And on the table right between us, there is a stack of typewritten papers.
Right. And it sounds like the start of a noir film or something. But what we have on the table is actually a ghost story.
Yeah.
But the catch is that it isn't fiction.
No, it's not. This is a transcript, a literal historical document.
We are looking at documented history of the paranormal, a literal transcript of a trance session. And it is chilling, but we are going to keep it chill today.
Chilling but chill. I like that.
We try.
Yeah.
We're diving into the spooky specifics of the paranormal. And specifically for all the archivists out there, we are analyzing session 394 of the early sessions book 8 of Seth Material, recorded on February 19, 1968.
And before we open this file, and it is a really thick file, we need to give credit where it is absolutely due. This material is preserved and curated and published by the New Awareness Network.
Oh, absolutely. Without them, these papers would just be dust in a basement somewhere.
Exactly. They do incredible work keeping this accessible.
And just so everyone is on the exact same page, I have to state this for the record because it's important. This podcast will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
We're here to learn, to explore, maybe get a few goosebumps along the way.
Hopefully a few goosebumps.
Yeah.
But mostly we're here to understand the mechanics of the unknown. And the mission for this deep dive is fascinating because we aren't just talking about ghosts in the abstract sheet with eye holes kind of sense.
Right. We are unpacking the heavy machinery of reality. We're talking precognition and the mechanics of past lives, the heavy burden of knowing the future.
And how oddly bureaucratic the afterlife can sometimes seem.
Bureaucratic is such a great word for it, but also surprisingly human. It's not just angels playing harps, it's people waiting for other people.
So set the scene for us. It is February 1968, Elmira, New York. The Beatles are in India. The world is changing entirely. And in a quiet living room, Jane Roberts is the medium and her husband Rob is taking notes.
Right.
What is the catalyst for this specific session? Because usually these things don't just happen in a vacuum.
No, they really don't. The vibe here starts with the phone call. And anyone who has studied the history of psychic phenomena knows that the long-distance phone call is often the spark.
It's that connection across the wire.
Exactly. So about a week prior to this session, Jane received a call from a man named John Pitre. And he is calling all the way from Franklin, Louisiana.
Which instantly adds a nice gothic touch to the atmosphere, swamp mysticism and humidity and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. It does add to the vibe. But the context is actually tragic, not just atmospheric. John is calling because his wife, Peggy, is very ill. He is desperate.
He's looking for answers.
Right. He wants answers that modern medicine or perhaps just his current spiritual framework isn't providing for him. He wants to know if she is going to make it. He wants to know what's happening to her.
So Jane agrees to ask Seth, the entity she channels about Peggy, during her next scheduled session.
Yes, she does.
Now, for the listener who might be new to this specific dynamic, Jane Roberts isn't just closing her eyes and guessing. She isn't doing a parlor trick.
Not at all.
When the session starts, the notes mention that she goes into a trance very slowly and deliberately. Rode makes a specific point of writing that down. Why that specific note?
That is a crucial detail for understanding the science, if you will, of mediumship. Rob notes that he felt she was slowing down the induction process to avoid distortion.
Interesting, to avoid distortion.
Think about it. When you are dealing with health and life and death and a stranger's dying wife, the stakes are incredibly high. The medium feels an immense pressure.
Right, she has to be essentially a clear pane of glass.
Precisely. If Jane is anxious or if she is afraid of delivering bad news, that emotion can smudge the message. She has to slow her own biological rhythm down to ensure the signal is clean.
It is like calibrating a telescope before you look at a distant star. You don't want your own shaky hands to blur the image.
That is a perfect analogy. So Seth comes through, and he starts, interestingly enough, by analyzing a dream that John, the husband, had.
Yeah, Seth confirms that John's dream had clairvoyant elements.
Yeah.
Which is important because it establishes that John isn't just a passive observer. He's tuned in too.
He is, but then Seth gets right to the heart of the matter. The wife, Peggy.
And this is where the vibe shifts for me, because Seth says something that really stopped me in my tracks. He says Peggy senses her own death. She knows it is coming, but she isn't afraid.
That is such a key insight. And it runs counter to how we usually think about terminal illness. We project our own fear onto the dying. We think, oh, they must be terrified.
Right, we assume it's just pure panic.
But Seth notes that the fear of death often belongs more to the living, to the people left behind, rather than the person in the transition process. He explains that she is receiving instructions in her dream state. She is being prepped.
Prep, that sounds almost clinical, like pre-op, or like packing for a long trip.
In a way, it is packing. The consciousness is beginning to detach from the physical biology. It is shifting focus. But then Seth pivots to something that I found profoundly intellectually stimulating.
The garments analogy.
Yes. He talks about the difference between John and Peggy's beliefs. It seems they come from different religious backgrounds, or at least different spiritual frameworks.
I have to say, this was one of the most lucid and beautiful explanations of religious conflict I have ever read. It takes all the anger right out of theology.
It is brilliant in its simplicity. Seth says, and I want to quote this because it's so precise, he says she has clothed a basic idea of reality in certain garments, and he has chosen other garments. Both are necessarily distortive, but beneath both is the same reality.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second.
Yeah.
Because in 1968, and honestly even today, and maybe especially today, religious differences in a marriage can be a huge source of tension.
Huge.
It becomes a game of I am right and you are wrong. My heaven is the real one and yours is fake.
You're going to the bad place and I'm going to the good place.
Exactly. And Seth is cutting right through that tribalism. He's using the metaphor of clothing. He's saying, look, you can wear a tuxedo and I can wear a swimsuit. We look totally different. If you judge by the surface, we are completely incompatible.
But the human body underneath the reality is identical.
Yeah.
The dogma and the rituals and the specific names for God, those are just the clothes we drape over the truth to make it understandable to our finite minds.
It is such a practical way to look at spirituality. It takes the heat out of the argument. It's not you're wrong, it's just nice shirt, not my style, but I see the person underneath.
And for John and Peggy, facing a terminal illness together, that is a life raft of a concept. It tells John, don't worry that she believes something different. You are both touching the same truth.
It validates her experience without invalidating his. It allows them to bridge that gap before the end.
It really does. So we have this profound spiritual moment. We are deep in the philosophy of the soul. The fire is crackling. We are contemplating the oneness of truth. And then
Seth pivots to business advice.
I love that about the Seth Material. It's never just clouds and harps. It is, here is the nature of the eternal soul. And by the way, here is some advice on your stock portfolio.
Right. Even spirits care about the economy. Seth mentions the initials AS regarding John, and he talks about a feeling of permanency.
He does. He mentions a venture that started or was thought of in 1963 that will come to fruition within 3 years. But there is a specific detail that stands out to me because it is so incredibly mundane, yet specific.
The brick mystery.
Yes, the brick.
A strange connection having to do with bricks. The laying of bricks.
That sounds so random, doesn't it?
Sounds completely bizarre. If I went to a psychic and asked about my future, and they said, I am seeing bricks, I would probably ask for a refund.
Or you'd assume they were telling you to build a patio.
Right. I'd be looking at masonry classes.
Yeah.
But that is exactly why it's credible in parapsychology. If you were faking it, or if your subconscious was just riffing, you would say, I see success, or I see a contract, or I see travel.
You wouldn't say bricks.
Exactly. The specificity and the oddness of the image suggests a direct hit on a visual data point that the medium doesn't necessarily understand, but is faithfully reporting anyway.
It grounds the reading completely. It tells John, I am really seeing your life, not a generic life. It suggests that our spiritual path and our career path, laying bricks or building businesses or answering phones, they're all part of the same tapestry. It isn't separated.
The spiritual and the material are woven together.
Always.
Okay, so we've established the diagnosis. We've given some career advice about bricks. But now we get to the part of this session that actually gave me shivers. The withheld death.
This is where the transcript moves from interesting to ethically complex. This is where the hair on the back of your neck really stands up.
Seth predicts that Peggy, the wife, will not die immediately. which sounds like good news. You hear that and you think, okay, great remission.
But the reasoning, the reasoning is spooky.
She won't die yet because some other important event must happen first.
It is like waiting for a train. You can't leave the station until the other train arrives. The schedule is locked in. And Seth describes who is waiting for her on the platform on the other side.
This is classic evidence of survival of personality in the Seth data. He lists specifics. He doesn't just say loved ones. He mentions a very young boy.
A survival personality.
Right. A child who passed. He mentioned someone named Anna. And then going further back, a Helen or Eloise, which he identifies as a maternal connection.
Imagine being John hearing this later. Hearing the names of your in-laws or lost relatives, it validates the entire experience.
But here's the tension. Seth knows something about this intervening event.
Yeah.
This thing that has to happen before Peggy can die.
Yeah.
But he refuses to tell John initially.
This is the ethical dilemma of prophecy. Seth explicitly refuses to give a date for the wife's death to the husband.
Why, though? If he knows, and if John is asking, why not say it? Why not say she has 6 months or she has a year?
He says, and this is fascinating, he says the knowledge would not be to his advantage, for his attitude toward her would change.
Wow.
It is a masterclass in the responsibility of knowledge. If you knew the exact date your loved one was going to die, how would you treat them?
You would probably stop treating them like a person and start treating them like a ticking clock. You would be grieving them while they were still sitting right there. You'd detach. You'd be checking the calendar every single morning.
Exactly. It would rob them of the now. It would rob the relationship of its natural flow. Seth is protecting the quality of their remaining time together over the quantity of information John possesses. He prioritizes the relationship over the data.
But, and here's where it gets really interesting, Seth does tell Rob and Jane, or rather, he tells Rob the scribe.
Yes, this is the section of the transcript marked deleted or private information. In the transcript, Seth instructs Rob to delete a specific sentence from the copy they sent to John.
The secret notes. What did Rob know that John didn't? What was the actual secret?
The twist is that the intervening event, the thing Peggy is waiting for, is likely the death of her own mother or a close aunt.
Oh, wow. So Peggy is holding on. She's waiting for her mother to cross over first.
That seems to be the implication. Seth warns of a severe and rather sudden illness or accident in mid to late March involving a woman close to the wife. He says, I believe that the wife's mother will die first. If it is not the mother, then the aunt.
That is heavy. That is incredibly heavy. Your wife won't die yet because her mother has to die next month first.
It is Greek tragedy level stuff. Seth says, I do not see any point in informing him. Probabilities do operate, but I do sense this rather strongly.
Let's talk about the burden on Rob and Jane here. Imagine you are the scribe. You are sitting in your living room in Elmira. You type up this report to send to a desperate husband in Louisiana. But you had to delete the paragraph that says, by the way, your mother-in-law is going to die suddenly next month.
You have to hold that secret.
It's the burden of the psychic. It is the silence that weighs the most. You are holding a truth that is simply too heavy for the recipient.
It changes the dynamic of the session entirely. It isn't just a service anymore. It is a moral tightrope walk. They are acting as filters for tragedy. They have to decide what helps and what hurts.
And speaking of that weight, it wasn't just a mental burden, it was physical.
Yes, let's connect this to the medium's physiology. Jane Roberts wasn't just a radio receiver. She wasn't just a microphone. She was a biological organism processing intense data.
The notes mention that Jane had physical symptoms for days leading up to this session. Annoyances, pains. She was irritable. She just wasn't feeling herself.
And Seth explains exactly why. He says she was subconsciously holding back the bad news.
So her body knew before her conscious mind did.
Her subconscious absolutely knew. She felt duty-bound to help John, but highly uneasy about delivering information that brings sorrow. That internal conflict of wanting to help but not wanting to hurt manifested as actual physical pain.
Somatic empathy.
Yes, somatic empathy. Her body was reacting to the stress of the secret she hadn't even consciously received yet.
It is like her body was trying to put the brakes on the car because it saw the cliff ahead even though her eyes were closed.
That's a great analogy. And during the break in the session, Jane even felt a sideways thrust of energy. She thought she was trying to project her consciousness all the way to Louisiana.
She was trying to get there to see for herself or to help. The sheer effort involved in this. We often think of channeling as just closing your eyes and talking, but this session shows the physical toll it takes. It is endurance work. It drains you.
It is exhausting work. It requires navigating complex emotional landscapes while maintaining that clear pane of glass state we talked about earlier. It's athletic in a spiritual sense.
So we have this heavy, heavy atmosphere, death predictions, secret notes regarding the mother-in-law, physical pain, a dying woman in Louisiana. The tension in the room must be thick enough to cut with a knife. And then catastrophe strikes.
The ultimate interruption, the destroyer of worlds.
The cat.
Willie.
Millie the cat. The session is abruptly interrupted at 10:11 p.m. Why? Because Willie jumps into Jane's lap while she is in a deep trance.
You have to appreciate the contrast here. It is cinematically perfect. We are discussing the architecture of the afterlife and the death of mothers and the clothing of souls and the heavy burden of prophecy. And then thump, pet me.
It is the most grounding thing possible. Seth even comments on it. He notes that usually Willie ignores the sessions. He's usually a very respectful cat. But this time it was distracting.
It serves as a reminder that no matter how deep you go into the mystical stuff, no matter how far you travel into the astral plane, you are still sitting in a living room in Elmira, New York, and the cat still wants attention.
It keeps the horror at bay. It reminds us that life, biological, demanding, furry life goes on.
I love that. The cat as the anchor to reality. Don't get too lost in the ether. Jane, my bowl is empty. Prioritize me.
Precisely. It breaks the tension, allows everyone to take a breath. It allows Rob to laugh, probably. It reminds them they are still human. Okay, let's shift gears. Because there is a third character in this room, besides Jane and Rob and the cat. There is a piece of art hanging from the ceiling. And this part of the session, I think, is where the deep dive really earns its name.
The mobile cross. This is a fascinating part of session 394 because it pivots from the specific case of John and Peggy to Rob's own spiritual development. It turns the lens back on the note-taker.
So for the listener, let's describe this. There is a sketch provided in the source material.
Yeah.
Adam had a vision of a sculpture he wanted to make.
Right. Rob saw it internally as cast iron, a heavy, dark, mottled cross, a real medieval-looking thing. But being a practical artist living in an apartment, he realized a cast iron cross that size would rip the ceiling down. It was physically impossible to hang.
So he improvised. He went DIY.
He did. He built a replica out of layers of illustration board, basically cardboard, and he painted it black. So it looks heavy, it looks ancient and iron, but it is actually light. It's paper. It's an illusion of weight.
And Seth loves this.
Yeah.
But he connects it to something totally unexpected. He connects it to Rob's past life.
Boston, 1872.
Seth says this sculpture is a direct echo of who Rob was in that life.
This is where we get into the symbolism of the cross. Seth explains that in Rob's past life in 1872, he had a complicated relationship with religion.
He says the crucifix, the Catholic symbol with the body on it, was distasteful to him in that life.
Right. But the bare cross, the Protestant symbol, was better yet still a symbol of death and an overhanging weight. It represented a Puritan afterlife. Rigid, heavy, joyless. Think of the late 19th century religious atmosphere in New England. It was about judgment. It was about carrying the weight of sin.
An overhanging weight. That is such a vivid description of religious guilt. It is something that literally hangs over your head.
But here's the beauty of the new sculpture. Seth points out that this new cross Rob made it hangs freely. It is immobile.
It moves. It spins.
It moves. It interacts with the air. Seth says your cross now hangs freely and is not static. It is a symbol of who you were in your last life. But it represents a transition.
The quote that stood out to me, and I circled it 3 times in my notes, was it represents a transition from a rigid, heavy religion to a joyous encounter with reality.
That is the big realization. Rob took a symbol of heavy, static death from a past life, the iron cross of judgment, and in this life he subconsciously transformed it into something that floats and turns and dances.
He kept the shape, but changed the nature.
Exactly. He made it out of cardboard, not iron. He made it light.
It is therapeutic art across centuries. He's healing his past self by re-engineering the symbol. He took the iron of his past guilt and turned it into the cardboard of his present creativity.
He made the heavy thing light. He took the weapon and turned it into a toy, effectively. And Seth even predicts that this isn't the final step. He says it is not meant to be finished. It is a transition and will lead to another sculpture.
It's like the sculpture is a stepping stone. Good job, Rob. You made the cross fly. Now what is next?
And during the session, Rob actually closes his eyes and tries to see that past life. He sees a church pulpit, empty seats, 1872. He connects with that old version of himself.
It's haunting, but in a beautiful way. It connects the bricklayer prediction for John to the crossmaker reality of Rob. We are all just reenacting these old patterns, aren't we? We're all just trying to make them lighter, trying to make them fly.
That is a beautiful way to put it. We're trying to make our heavy crosses fly. We're trying to turn our iron into paper.
Before we wrap up, we have to touch on the routine. because for anyone listening who wants to develop their own intuition or just get better at anything, really, Seth gives some very practical coaching here.
He does. He emphasizes routine. He tells Jane and Rob that except for vacation sessions should be regular, same time, same place.
Truly spectacular sessions will follow if they stick to the schedule.
It is the discipline of the mystic. You can't just wait for lightning to strike. You can't just wait to feel inspired. You have to show up at the lightning rod at the same time every week.
It builds a charge.
It creates a container for the energy to flow into. First, you build the structure, and second, the energy fills it.
And he mentions Jane's insecurity, that she distrusts herself when Rob isn't there performing for students without him.
It highlights the partnership. This wasn't just Jane. It wasn't just Seth. It was the triad. Jane and Rob and Seth. They needed each other to create this stability. Rob was the anchor like the cat in a way that allowed Jane to fly.
So what does this all mean for us? We've looked at a sick woman in Louisiana and a cat in New York, a ghost from Boston 1872, and a mobile made of cardboard. It is a lot to take in. It feels like a scattered puzzle.
I think the thread that connects them all is the idea of hidden structures.
Us hidden structures.
Yes, think about it. There is a hidden structure to Peggy's death. The intervening event involving her mother. We can't see it, but it's there guiding the timing. There is a hidden structure to our beliefs, the garments we wear over the truth.
And there is a hidden structure to Rob's art, the memory of a past life that dictates what he builds with his hands today.
The world looks chaotic, but Seth is showing us the blueprints underneath.
And sometimes those blueprints are made of bricks. And sometimes they're made of invisible agreements between family members on who crosses over first.
Exactly. And our job as learners is to peek at those blueprints whenever we can, to realize that the heavy things in our lives might just be waiting for us to turn them into mobiles, to realize that the fear we feel about death might just be us wearing the wrong clothes.
That is a fantastic takeaway. Don't carry the cross, make it float.
Make it flow.
This has been a fascinating journey into session 394. If this deep dive sparked your curiosity, and I really hope it did, you owe it to yourself to go to the source.
Absolutely. Do not just take our word for it. We are just scratching the surface here. We are just the guides talking about the map you need to walk the terrain yourself. Study the Seth Material books. There are volumes of this wisdom.
You can find them at the New Awareness Network website and bookstore. That is at sethcenter.com/the-early sessions. Go support the publisher who keeps these archives alive. It is a literal treasure trove.
It is a library worth getting lost in for sure.
And a final provocative thought for you to chew on as you go about your week. We talked about Rob's sculpture being an echo of a past life. Look around your house right now, or when you get home. Look at the art you bought. Look at the hobbies you picked up.
Look at the things you collect.
Why do you like that specific style furniture? Why are you obsessed with that specific era of history? What if they aren't just random choices? What if they are clues to who you used to be?
Now that is a provocative thought. What if your living room is a museum of your past lives?
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. Keep your eyes open, watch out for flying cats, and maybe check your ceiling for heavy crosses. We'll see you next time.